Time to learn about flex items. Flex items are nothing but all the elements which are placed inside our flex box, meaning the element or the parent element which has its property set to display flex. All the items inside it, all the elements inside it are known as flex items. So let's take a simple look at our property known as order. Now, Flexbox allows us to also set properties to the items directly. And remember that these will work only if they are inside the Flexbox. So I've created these six classes, each one of them representing an order. The property is set as order, and there is a number given over here, which represents the order in a particular stack, for example. Now, over here at bottom in the divs which I have created inside our parent divs, meaning the items over here, I'm going to also assign a particular class name. And if you can see, I have created these class names, but I've assigned them in a different order. So for example, the number 1 has been assigned a class which is O4, which is order set to 4. Then 2 has been assigned O1, whereas 3 is assigned 3, 4 is assigned 2, 5 is 5, and 6 is 6, meaning those orders won't change. And in the outcome, you see now our items have been cascaded. 1 has gone to the fourth position, 2 has gone to the first position, 4 has come to the second position. This has changed without having to change a line of code in the HTML declaration, meaning you can just manipulate the classes or the styles directly to achieve such cascading. The order of items to be displayed in a flexbox can be controlled using the order property. One more amazing property that is provided by Flexbox is known as Flex Grow. What Flex Grow allows us to do is set some responsive property wherein if the size of the screen is changing or or the width of the screen is changing, the elements can adapt to its size, and you can define at what speed or at what rate do the sizes change of various elements. Now, for example, over here I have created our same div and save children, except that this time I've set different set of classes in here. The classes set over here is uh, item and normal grow. Whereas in the normal grow, I've set this property known as flex grow equals to 1. The value is set to 1, wherein it is going to just grow at the same rate as any other element under the same parent. Now, what if I set a different property to one of the elements? That is different grow, and in different grow, I've set a property size to 12. To make it easier for understanding, I'm going to set it down to 3. And if you can see in the screen over here, this appears to be slightly larger than the other boxes. Now, 3 doesn't really mean that it is going to be 3 times the size of normal boxes because all of them have their own fixed width. If you look at the responsive menu over here by going to the inspect option in your browser and you try to change the sizes, you see there is a particular change of size that happens in each box as you try to increase or decrease the size of your screen. Now, in this case, you observe box number 2 is actually growing much faster than the others, and all of them shrink to a singular size. When they reach that same size, the boxes split and go on to the other row because of the flex wrap property that we set into this. This is quite helpful when you are supposed to have different sizable items in the same row, and also when you want to have some sort of a strict sizing constraint put into certain boxes, as this is going to have more text content, which needs to be widely available on the different screen sizes. So that's again a choice of decision, a choice of design that you make while deciding upon how much rate of growth has to be set. I can set a higher rate of growth. Let's say I can set it to 12, and it grows much faster. So that is a rate of growth. Now, of course, you don't have screens that change sizes dynamically, but times are changing. Modern browsers and modern devices such as flip phones and split screen phones, where you open the phone into a larger screen and the sizes change. This is where interactions like this are very helpful. Flex shrink. Flex shrink is the exact opposite of flex grow. Whereas flex grow appears in case of we changing the size of the screen, giving it more width space available. Flex shrink acts whenever the screen size is shrinking. Now, if we look at the screen again, we have all our divs in one place and we try to shrink them. And before they start to break apart, you see, the size of these boxes tend to shrink a little bit. You can see the padding space around these text reducing a bit. And no matter whatever fixed width I've given it, it tries to shrink and fit it as much as possible. And beyond a certain point, it breaks apart and then goes off the size of the canvas. Canvas, I mean the document of the HTML. So what happens over here is we have set it a fixed shrink size. Now, in case of a fixed shrink size, we can also set a custom shrink size. So I've taken this class known as the different shrink, and I have created a flex shrink and set it to 3. And I'm going to apply this to the item number 2 over here. You see the div which contains the text 2 inside of it, TW2. It has been set to a different shrink size. And if I try to shrink the screen now, you see the rate at which it shrinks is 3 times faster than the rest of the boxes. If I shrink it a little, as you can see, all of the boxes have shrunk, and the box containing the text TWO2 is shrinking even much faster and has less width compared to the other boxes. And if it were thought that this contains 3 characters only, you also have 3 characters in the box containing the number 6 and 1. However, the size of those is much larger than 2 over here. This is how flex shrink works. Now for flex shrink to work, you have to always remember that you need to remove the property flex wrap or set it to no wrap. Otherwise, the change won't be visible to you. Similar to flex shrink, we also have another property known as flex basis. Now in the given example, you see when you try to shrink, these items shrink automatically a little. And by default, there is a certain size set to them. Now, what if you needed a base size set to one of these items or a few of these items? Let's take an example where I've created this class set basis and I've set a flex basis property called 300 pixels. Now, how about I set it to one of these items, say the item that has the text 2 inside of it. And if you can see, it automatically applies the width of 300 pixels to this particular item, which is a basic size, but it doesn't remain the basic size forever. The moment you start shrinking your screen, the size also starts reducing in comparison to the others. And the screen starts breaking only when you have reached the limit where this cannot be shrunk any further. And after that, you can see the canvas size of your HTML document has started to reduce, and the items are overflowing. But the moment you stretch it again, the size of the item is restored to its former size 300 pixels. This is known as flex basis. Now, the use of this is exactly opposite, but again, it can be utilized in responsive modes to manage how content looks. One little example is to handle sizes of items on a menu bar. So if I undo the property where I have set the flex wrap, and I have wrapped this flex again, you won't notice the shrinkage anymore because items when not available, the space is not available in the width, are moved to the next line. However, when all of the items are moved and all you have is nothing but this item left, you can shrink it down. So the shrink factor works again over here, but it maintains its base size till all the items have been shifted to the point that you can no more sustain the width for it. Last but not least, we have the align self property. The align self property is basically the item level version of the align items property. Now, we have tried the align items property being set to the flex box itself. However, if we want to only set that property to one of the items instead of all of them, this can be done using the align self property to a particular flexbox item inside a flexbox. Let's take an example. I've created 3 classes over here. Align self center, A start is for align self flex start, A end is having a property flex end. Okay. Now, first thing I'm going to do to simulate the align items property, we are going to first set a height to the container. So the moment I set a height to the container, let's say I set a height of 300 pixels. The container height is also absorbed by the items inside of it, which is the default property of a flexbox, and the height is generated by all its items. Now, I want to set a different property to the size of the items. I can do with align items, and I can set the align items to center, which basically retains the original height of my items and it brings them to the center of the screen. I can also use flex start, which basically takes it to the top level and retains its original height. Now, what if I wanted to do this, but only for a few elements inside the flexbox? Number one, I'm going to get rid of the property align items, or I can keep it and override only a certain items that I want. Then I move on to the items where I want to set it. Now I've already created the classes which have these properties set into them. Let's play around with item number 2 and set it a property A center. The moment I do that, the others retain the height which they have got from the container. However, number two retains its original height and is balanced to the center. I can do this as a start also, and it goes to the top. Whereas item number three, I'm going to use a center, and item number four, I'm going to use a end, which is going to set the property flex start and flex end to them and flex center to them. That is align self center. And you see these items have gone one, two, three from top to bottom. This could be a graphical effect that you want to generate and can be achieved by the following manner. Also, to make this a uniform effect for the other remaining ones, let's say the other ones I want them to be in the center, I could simply put align items center, and the others take up the property of center. However, the custom property of center, top and bottom has been set to these three at the item level itself. So they override anything that has come from the Flexbox parent itself. That's about it for Flexboxes. And you can discover many more items in Flexboxes by trying out different permutation and combination. Do practice this to understand it better. Thank you.